The history between Ozpin and Salem, many expected exactly what we got. The two were once past lovers. There weren't many scenarios that could have been between these two. Some expected father and daughter, perhaps the reverse, or the real wild card, there was no connection. But Volume 6 confirmed what many thought it would be. However, what those exact same people, including myself, didn't expect was that these two had kids. In current day, there was no mention of any bloodline that could have possibly spawned between the two, and so no one really thought about it. But a current theory that floats around the community is, are these 4 girls the Maidens? So why do people think this, and does this theory hold any weight? First, it is important to know the story of the Maidens. As the show explained, Ozpin in one of his past lifetimes was an old hermit living in isolation. 4 sisters then visited him, each providing different acts of kindness. Winter encouraged him to meditate and reflect. Spring brought his garden back to life, providing him with fruits and vegetables. Summer convinced him to leave his home and step outside so he could embrace the world. And fall taught him to appreciate and be thankful for the things that he has. The 4 sisters didn't do this for any reason, they were just kind. Thankful for what they have given and taught him. Ozpin gifts the sisters powers of the seasons, and the 4 go through Remnant spreading their newfound gift. The reason this theory gained traction is due to the kids' design. The colors, the overall theme of the girls reflects the Maidens from the story that we as the audience already knew. Winter is blue, spring is green, summer is pink, and fall is orangish brown. The imagery is something that most take notice of. But it's not just their colors that gave weight to this idea. It was also due to the fact that one of the girls, the eldest, who was also the eldest in the story, was shown the ability to use magic, just like her parents. Plus, all 4 of them are sisters. These 4 sisters, so the colors, the magic, the sisters, it's gotta be the Maidens, right? Well, I wouldn't be so sure. I'm certain that many of you right now are saying, but didn't they die? That certainly was the implication that was given off from this stuffed animal being charred. But as I myself, as well as many others, used this argument in the past, no body equals no death. If the body of someone who was supposedly killed off isn't shown, then the option is always there for that person to return. So because the bodies weren't shown, we can't 100% say with accuracy whether or not the kids died that night. So there are 2 paths that this theory can now go from. One where these kids are the Maidens, and one where they're not. Let's first start off with the theory that these kids are in fact the Maidens. Right out of the gate, that would once again mean that Ozpin, big shocker, lied. The story of the seasons and the Maidens is just a lie. And this goes beyond even just Ozpin. This is a fairy tale we're talking about, stories and legends that actually happened, eventually becoming fiction. So if the story of the seasons is wrong, then none of the other stories we can believe with any sort of accuracy. The lore that the show has already laid out in front of us is trying to be written over, saying that everything about it is wrong. Here's how it actually happened. A potential second wrench that follows this theory presumes that the girls survived that night. If they had survived that night, then Salem would have been the sole parent who raised all 4 of the girls. All of them are in a stage where they can be molded and influenced into anything. So, once again going off the story of the original Maidens as we knew them, Salem is either actually an incredible mother who raised daughters perfectly to do all kind things, or, once again, the story was fake. Something interesting that does need questioned is the unique circumstance that both Ozpin and Salem are in. You see, if 2 magic users have a child, then it's not wild to presume that the child will have magic as well. But what makes this unique is the question, does a curse get passed on? Both Ozpin and Salem in their own respective ways are cursed with immortality, neither one can die. So if those 2 have children, are they cursed with immortality as well? This is the most interesting argument because both sides can be debated. In the original story of the Maidens, they are gifted with borrowed power, so if the one who gave them powers wants it to find someone new every time, then that explains that. But if the girls were cursed to begin with, then it's like the powers can never die. The problem that I have with this scenario is the cursed powers. It's the powers that can't go away, not the girls. Ozpin and Salem will forever reincarnate or just reform. But as we've seen, the powers keep going from person to person. So it's not as if the girls themselves are reincarnating, it would just be their powers for some reason. On top of that, as far as we know, there's nothing that implies a similar curse as Ozpin's. So nothing has led the audience to believe that these girls' conscience is floating around in the heads of the current Maidens. That's the biggest hang-up that I have with their powers. I like the idea that a curse was passed down along with their magic, but things just don't line up and make sense if that were true. So I don't believe that these are the Maidens from the story. So then the bigger question here to ask is, why implant the idea of these 4 being the Maidens? It's no coincidence that all 4 share the same colors as the original Maidens. Why throw this thought at us? I've already discussed how if these 4 were in fact the original Maidens, then so much logic and lore would be harmed because of it. If it, when given thought, does more harm than good, then what's the purpose? Let's, for the sake of argument, say that these 4 are not the original Maidens, and the story of the seasons is 100% true. What is the significance? You see, me personally, I always found it a bit odd that the old man was so quick and willing to give these 4 his powers. They were incredibly kind, and there's no reason to try and cast shade onto the girls. But just random acts of kindness deemed them worthy for Ozpin? Surely by this iteration of his life, he's had to have come across others who could technically have been just as worthy of it. Because of the lost fable, I don't believe that his children were the Maidens, but I do believe they were the inspiration for the Maidens. I think it was more than just these sisters' random acts of kindness that influenced Ozpin to give them powers. Rather, it was because there were so many similarities between them. The colors, the 4 sisters, the eldest, that these 4 reminded him of the children he lost, and by giving them powers, it was as though the children were still alive. A selfish act disguised as though it were a gift. Because despite the circumstance of how it happened, these powers would eventually be hunted down. Innocent women were killed because of the power. It, in its own right, is a curse that cannot be lost by death. So until the show elaborates further, the rules of the powers transferring, the logic of how they work, all lines up best with the story of the seasons. I believe these girls were the inspiration for its creation, but not the originals that we knew. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that the descendants of Ozpin and Salem are indeed the seasonal maidens? Or is there something else I didn't mention? Any and all thoughts, be sure to let me know in the comments below, as well as the reason that you think the way you do. Share your thoughts with everyone, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.